Lepo pozdravljeni. Danes bi govorili o...
Ladies and gentlemen, we will talk about agriculture and forestry cooperatives, and at the beginning, because I'm a member of the cooperative union, I will present to you a number of dry factual data on this sector in Slovenia. This will be followed by my colleagues who will add variety to these presentations, and they will speak from day-to-day reality, from the Slovene context. I will also speak about what is the experience of this sector in Italy, because we have our colleague from San Giorgio. If I make a brief attempt to summarize and say what will be the topic of my presentation, I would first of all try to present the sector of agriculture and forestry cooperatives, which are joined under the umbrella of our cooperative unions. So today, or this year rather, we are celebrating and commemorating the 140th anniversary. I will also speak about the general framework which are set, enabling us to develop and organize in the sector. I will speak about organizational amendments and our cooperation when it comes to ownership transformation. I will speak about business initiatives when it comes to branding and networking. I will speak about other activities pursued by our union. I will also speak about the International Year of Cooperatives. If I now make a brief attempt to present our ID, to present the sector, I can tell you that in Slovenia, at the beginning of this year, 352 cooperatives were registered, out of which 301 cooperative published an annual business report. Agricultural cooperatives operate under the umbrella of our cooperative union, and they, in terms of economic indicators, in terms of the number of employees, revenue, in terms of assets, netto value added which they generate, they account for 24% when it comes to the total number of all cooperatives. As I have said already, the sector of agriculture and agricultural workers is the area which is the most developed in Slovenia. Unfortunately, we don't have any statistical data as to the membership, so the number of members. This is not an obligation, which is why we merely have an obligation to collect the numbers referring to our members. So our membership amounted to 5,490 members. Unfortunately, I do not have the data on other cooperatives. So when it comes to the Act and our institutional framework, we have the Act on cooperatives following the basic principles of operation. In addition, it also sets out rules relating to the transition of cooperatives. So the property of cooperatives is now in the hands of cooperatives, and we have also been able to cooperate in the period of privatization, which is why we have been entitled to receive the maximum of 45% of social property, and of course we were in a position to ask for this property which was taken after the Second World War to be back and be given back to us. The Act was amended on 3 occasions. It first included merely technical provisions, then in 2007 there were certain provisions on ownership transformation of cooperatives. So there was a 6-year delay, and the state of play was in fact similar to the one which was adapted for commercial companies in 2001, and then in 2009 certain European provisions were introduced, and there were also some other options which were introduced into our legislation which model on the European legislation, and this has been used in practice, although in Slovenia we don't have any European cooperative which operates, and European cooperatives in fact in the EU member states are not well developed as well. And then there are also a number of other regulations which regulate cooperatives. When it comes to agricultural cooperatives, agricultural regulations and common agricultural policy are very important. It has been subject to great change in the past 20 years. So first we received direct aid, which was linked to the production. Now, however, these payments have been decoupled, and cooperatives therefore are not entitled to receive any aid. Then we have legislation regulating forestry and banking, and of course we also have to comply with certain reforms. For example, a tax reform was introduced on a number of occasions, and of course cooperatives were affected as well in one way or another. Then as far as a 20-year period is concerned in the area of agriculture, we underwent a number of changes. Once the Cooperative Act was established, existing cooperatives had to transform in line with the legislation. So the basic organization of cooperative members have now become agricultural and forestry cooperatives, and the credit, our cooperative union provided great assistance. As for our association, it is now a voluntary association of all the cooperatives involved, so we no longer have obligatory membership. If you recall what I have just said, so in terms of economic indicators, we have been able to maintain our membership, and this goes for the entire cooperative sector, not just agricultural sector. When it comes to the cooperative union, we provide for internal representation, and we also provide in-house support to our member cooperatives. As for business tasks, they are performed by cooperatives individually, or they are transferred to a higher level. So we have umbrella central organization. For example, the bank called Želna Banka Slovenia has a majority share of cooperatives. As for the banking sector, until 2005, Slovenia had savings banks and relevant umbrella associations. So they worked under the umbrella of agricultural cooperatives, they provided services, so they employed agricultural workers and workers in general. But later, they have been transformed, and I will address this somewhat later. In the past 15-year period, we have seen a gradual integration of cooperatives, which is proceeding at a slower pace. Yet it is a great honor to mention that with me I also have the director of our Koroška cooperative, and it was established when 5 independent cooperatives merged. So now they have a common, united cooperative, which is able to achieve better results and achieve better conditions when compared to 5 cooperatives in the past who were poorly coordinated and management. Then when it comes to ownership transformation of cooperatives, they participated in this transformation in the area of dairy sector, meat processing industry. The number of such companies was severely diminished. Why? On account of liquidation, bankruptcy, or on account of status amendments and changes. So there were different forms of transformations, mergers, acquisitions. If you just take into account the dairy sector, due to mergers, we have seen a substantial drop of dairy firms. Our cooperative union made an attempt to provide assistance to our members. Also, when it came to ownership transformation of companies, we concluded different contracts enabling us for cooperatives to join forces, to appear jointly at the market. We unfortunately have failed with one exception, where we established one company where cooperatives transferred shares to the Ljubljana dairy. So within one dairy we have been able to exert pressure, and we have been able to manage policy within the biggest dairy firm in Slovenia. Then, when it comes to Celje dairy firm, we have been able to obtain a majority stake as well. So if I say something which might be of interest to you, about a month ago, a takeover bid was submitted by cooperatives to take over the Ljubljana dairy firm. The procedure will complete on the 19th of October. So when it comes to the returning of nationalized property, upon the initiative of other cooperatives, we submitted claims for our property to be returned in the area where we didn't have many property claims, but we had enough evidence to show that in the past we had an important agricultural cooperative and this property was taken away from this relevant cooperative. And then in this case, we have been able to come up with claims, not just as a successor, but we have been entitled to submit application. And our cooperative union also helped in the dissolution of forestry holdings. So we have different agricultural and forestry cooperatives which took over the forestry sector and the public services provided by the Association of Forests. Where we didn't have a basic organization of cooperative members, our forestry cooperative concluded a contract and the property was transferred to this cooperative. When it comes to savings and credit services and the cooperative bank, the Banking Act, in fact, prevents this cooperative bank. So the Banking Act excludes this possibility. The only option is LTD. Although we had a number of proposals submitted, a lot of research was submitted, which shows that it might be a good idea to make this transition, to have a cooperative bank, yet we failed. So these solutions were not integrated in the Banking Act, which was passed in the 1999. So these credit services joined forces, they formed a union, but it has been proven that this union cannot perform and provide banking services. So in 2005, all these activities, all the assets were transferred to the bank called Deželna banka. In exchange of these assets, we were given a majority package of shares and we have been transformed into a capital cooperative. So cooperatives have an impact and they have voting rights within Deželna banka bank. Capital increase was performed in 2005, but still cooperatives are still in charge of the umbrella bank. So when it comes to business initiative, let me draw your attention to the bank called Deželna banka. This bank was set up because in 1990 regulations prevented to organize ourselves as a bank, which is why cooperative unions in the sector decided to join forces. Then agri-food tourism. We also have a relevant cooperative and tourist agency. Then commodity goods and turnover, we have a relevant cooperative as well. And a company responsible for the management of investment funds. As my colleague said yesterday, after the first act on investment funds and management companies, cooperatives were not in a position to manage funds. So when it comes to current business initiatives, there was a takeover bid I've already referred to when it comes to the Ljubljana dairy. And then when it comes to procurement and supply of goods, cooperatives are joining forces. Then interest representation, we are present in the National Council of the Republic of Slovenia. This is the second house of the Slovene Parliament. We also have our members in the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Then the Chamber of Forestry and Agriculture, we also have a member there, as well as we are present at the European level within the COGECA association. We also cooperate with relevant ministries and working bodies within the Slovene Parliament, as well as other NGOs. We also offer legal, tax and financial advice. We also support business activities of other cooperatives. We make an attempt to have up-to-date information channels. We also have publications. Then we have a monthly magazine which deals with landscape, and then we also offer training to our members. We want to transmit knowledge, up-to-date expertise. And until 2008 or 2009, we were also responsible for audit. It was said that European legislation doesn't allow for cooperative audit, which is why we no longer have these powers. However, in Austria and Germany, although they also have to respect European legislation, are still responsible for auditing their members. So this, in fact, is a paradox then. But this, as I have already said, is no longer done in Slovenia. So the International Year of Cooperatives, we also prepared a program, but I do not have time to dwell on that. When it comes to our operations, here you have the data, aggregated data, on our sales activities. I have included a 16-year period, so since 1996 to 2011. As you have seen, when it comes to certain produce such as wheat, we are seeing fluctuations, which also reflect changes in our policies. When it comes to other produce such as milk, beef, the indicators reveal that we have a positive trend in the long run. This probably is a good thing when one considers that, in fact, cattle production, in fact, is the most important sector for agricultural cooperatives, which calls for predictability and security, which is why our members are interested to be members, which enable, of course, constant buying in flows. So when it comes to supplying and providing services to our farmers, I have just two items to mention here. First, fertilizers. There was a severe drop in 2011. Why? Because a questionnaire was amended, which is why we merely have to consider retail and not wholesale. So this is the reason why there is a big drop. When it comes to other types of fertilizers, we have seen a positive trend. If I now make an attempt to summarize, to see what we have witnessed in the past 12 years, we can say that in terms of membership and in terms of turnover, our membership has dropped slightly. Why? Due to mergers, due to acquisitions of different cooperatives. On the other hand, our revenue, our turnover grew, and despite of a crisis, we have been able to record a positive trend within a 3-year period, and this probably is quite gratifying and satisfactory. In my opinion, what is the importance of agricultural cooperatives? They perform their basic role. They supplied farmers with basic inputs for production. In this way, they provide for marketing of the most important agricultural produce, and their activities are adapted to market needs, which is why they try to improve the negotiating clout of farmers. Although if one bears in mind agro-processing industry, we are still a very fragmented sector, but without cooperatives, farmers would even have greater difficulties. So this is not just a Slovene problem, a Slovene characteristic feature, but a global and European phenomenon, namely how to strike a balance in food supply chain, because you have a bottleneck in the area of trade, you have a great number of producers and consumers, but sometimes you have a monopoly of retailers and wholesalers. So when it comes to cooperatives, they in fact maintain and create competition. Without that, this competition will not be provided, because as Professor Borzaka said yesterday, markets are not perfect. There is not such thing as perfect competition. This only is present in theory and textbooks, but reality is somewhat different. Then, members of cooperatives have a unique opportunity, because although other organizations speculate and they have some sort of marketing saying that their members manage, this is not the case, yet our members do have an impact on business decision, and they also help in managing cooperatives. As for the future, when it comes to the common agricultural policy at the EU level, we expect to support even more this trend of adaptation of production to market needs, and that will also be able to concentrate supply, which is why we will have new measures within the CAP within the next financial period. And we do hope that the role of cooperatives will be given a more prominent role. Today in Brussels there is a presentation of a very important survey conducted by the Agricultural University in Wageningen. It deals with the support which can be provided to agricultural cooperatives. We also have a biotechnical faculty, Professor Udovic from Slovenia, and they also participated in the project. So the European Union is also interested in supporting agricultural cooperatives, and they try to enforce these standards into practice. I will conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention. But I said yesterday, nobody is interested in dry factual statistical data. Everybody wants to hear about a story. And now we will hear these concrete stories. We will hear about individual examples, and you will be able to see what these examples really are all about, so whether my numbers do translate into practice. Thank you very much.